Hello everyone, it is Redmen Radio, the Liverpool podcast by me, Paul Machin, and the man sat opposite me, Mr. Chris Pajak. Hi. Missed you last week.
All right, okay.
Tom was good.
It was a good podcast. I enjoyed it.
He's no Chris
enjoyed
Pajak,
it.
that was he.
It was good. I'm glad that Moreno got into an answer for a question again.
Will Moreno make it into the answer for another question this week, whether here or on the Q&A?
I actually listened to it on Spotify.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because that's now possible. If you listen to it on Spotify, you know that already. But if it's been a source of massive irritation for you, like it has been for me, because every podcast that I listen to is on Spotify, apart from ours, and now ours is. So there you go. Yeah, you can get it on Spotify. Search the Redmen TV and it'll crop up.
That's exactly how you do it.
Exactly like that. Or search Redmen, then find our Office playlist from back in the day, which comes up first, then a number of selections from Redman, and then eventually find us in the podcast. And
some decent albums from Redman as well, to be fair. I had 2 of them on CD.
On CD?
Yeah.
Not mini disc?
No, not mini disc, no. What did I have on mini disc? The first album I bought on mini disc. What's the name of it? Lauryn Hill was in it.
Oh, the Education of Lauryn Hill.
No, she was in
Fugees.
The Fugees, that was it, yeah.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Where'd you go from there? You go to a kick-off question brought to us this week by Callum Buck. Does the whole coaching team fall ill on the day of the game? What players take to the sidelines as non-playing staff, i.e. manager, assistants, etc.? Now, I want to know, if this happened, if this is like designated survivor / dystopian sci-fi future, Battlestar Galactica as an example, is there a line of succession here? Like, is there a hierarchy in place? Because you know, like when Rafa had his gallstones and it was left to like the goalkeeper coach to be on the phone for him and what have you. Before we get into who you've picked as which players, I wonder whether there's like it falls to the canteen staff eventually.
What are we thinking? The TV series Designated Survivor, it's actually a thing in the American politics, isn't it? If they're all in one place, there's one person who's the designated survivor and who goes off and in a completely different place in case they all get blown up. In that case, I'm not sure that Liverpool have got that right now.
Okay.
I can't see that it's top of the agenda at the AGM about who it is. It's probably Caroline and what's her name from
Caroline.
Yeah, it's probably them two if you're going to pick anybody.
Yeah.
They're not who I've chosen because it was stipulated that I had to be playing staff.
I like the idea that it's Michael Edwards and he can't communicate verbally with anyone. He can only communicate with them via emails from his laptop. Yeah. He's like, or he's just connected to a screen and people go, well, where do we go? And he just goes. He's just gesticulating angrily towards it. Don't ask me questions.
Why are they all wearing Google Glass? Because it's the only way that Edwards can get his things into them and everything's coming up in front of them.
Google Glass. Amazing. I had to try them once. They're really fine. Absolutely fine. Fine for a world where you're living in Silicon Valley, where it's fine to walk down the street with a pair of glasses that clearly cost about £1,000. Try walking through like Litherland with a pair of Google Glass on. That's not going to last very long. Go on then. You pick the players to take over the sidelines as non-playing staff, manager, assistant.
James Milner.
Okay.
Mainly because he's played for a lot of top managers and stuff. He's that little bit more experienced. I don't think he's too far away from getting into a suit and stomping the sidelines anyway. Mm-hmm. It definitely feels like that's a role that he could take up. And then I was thinking about how big a miss he'd be in the side. Yeah. So I went with Lallana second. And I don't mean to be completely disrespectful to Lallana, but he's injured quite a bit anyway. I feel like he could fulfill 2 roles. Yeah. One of the team physio, because he knows what they do, and also the assistant manager. Yeah, exactly. And it's a bit like Paisley did it back in the day.
Yeah. Stepped up from spongeman to manager.
So there you go. Maybe something like that. And I picked a goalkeeping coach as well because it's not going to be Mignolet that's stepping into that role. I'll tell you that. Wow. So I went with Grabara as the goalkeeping coach.
Yeah, I mean, again, they know all the tricks. They're there. Just put some crosses in, put some fairly inaccurate crosses in, kick some really hard shots wide of the post, limp about the place. You've nailed it.
Yeah, sorted. And you don't want Simon Mignolet to be a goalkeeping coach?
No. Well, I'd rather him be the goalkeeping coach than the goalkeeper, given the choice. I think there's an important step here. And you nailed it. Was you don't want to be weakening your side here. But I have in the James Milner stuff. I've just gone because if Milner is the perfect assistant at the moment. So you've got Henderson as manager, Milner as assistant, and then you sort of like one of the coaching roles that seems to fill the bench, whether it's your Pep Linders or stuff. Is
out of interest, who is your midfield three now?
So my midfield three, because so here's what it is: you're throwing in, let's say, Fabinho, Keita, Wijnaldum, but James Milner to do the Kenny Dalglish style stuff where, exactly, where he's playing assistant manager, where for the last 20 minutes we really need an assist from somewhere, and so merely rocks up and goes onto the pitch. Yeah. Let us know your suggestions for that in the comments, or by tweeting at the Redmen TV. News and brief time. Alberto Moreno, according to Neil Jones, will be allowed to leave on a free next summer. I mean, at the moment, there's no contract been offered. It's not outside the realms of possibility that another one would be offered, Chris. But I mean, this seems like a fairly logical thing. Liverpool, they're not likely to cash in on him because there's no sense in cashing in. And we've had this in the past where you get to keep a guy who's fine for the rest of the season and then he goes on his merry way. You're not going to buy anyone in, and by the talk of what's in the Neil Jones article as well, is I think it's Adam Lewis. Klopp likes him and sees him as the next in the line of progression, so you're not going to buy anyone in anyway, so there's almost no sense in selling him.
I think I agree with that. I think, right now we've got two very, very good left backs. When you look at backup left backs around the league, everyone has a little laugh about Alberto Moreno and stuff, but he's probably one of the most experienced backup left backs in the Premier League at the moment, and he would certainly be able to step in and do a job for short to medium, maybe long term as well. We would lose something obviously from Robertson not being in the side, but realistically, he's not a bad option to have at all. You're not
put, like, in times gone by when we've put, Carragher's at left back, and Carragher was an outstanding left back, but Carragher wouldn't be an outstanding left back in today's game.
He wouldn't, would he? And I think people are probably unfairly critical on Moreno at times, because for the role that he performs in this squad now, he's absolutely fine for it. And he's always got his head down. I think he's always worked hard. He does seem to be a little bit of a laugher and a joker. He's just not got the talent that we need, unfortunately, and it's not his fault. I'm sure he'd want to be able to succeed, and he's probably one of those guys where you think to yourself, well, we'll keep him around because he's a good option to have this year. Yeah. But if we've got better coming down the line, then there's probably no point in buying somebody else for that role.
We're only just reaching the point of we've not even had a year of Andy Robertson at left back. And so it's weird, as much as it feels like we've had him forever, and he is our fully established left back, and he is at this point. You're dead right, Moreno. We're not so far removed, and people do. Moreno is the obvious fall guy in that squad, and rightly so, because he's made a prick of himself at times. He's done some horrendous things in football matches. He hasn't, and he's one of those that gets worse in memory for not playing. Worth pointing out, we just don't know what Andy Robertson would have looked like. Whether you can surmise that Robertson would have been integrated eventually into the team, but he was pushed into the team because Moreno got injured.
Yeah, and Moreno was performing at an absolutely superb level, probably the best that he played last season at the start of the season for us.
And before everyone types in, yes, he was shocking against Sevilla in the Champions League. We're not sitting here. We don't love Moreno, but let's be fair to the guy who's put the shift in. You can't discount the fucking bad things he did, but he was absolutely, by and large, fine last year.
He was, yeah. And the question marks for me aren't over whether he's a decent footballer or not. It's whether he's good enough to take this Liverpool side and be a part of this Liverpool side if we're challenging for the title. And I think, honestly, for me, he's not.
Yeah, he's got the basics thing, and you consider what you've had to do, and I reference the Carragher stuff. You could drop in a lad who's got no pace, but he's got loads of game intelligence, and we kind of did that with Milner, and we got a bit lucky to some extent that Milner's such a good, versatile footballer. Moreno, when you look at like understudies and things, you want a guy who can replicate the rough features of what you do in your side already, and that's what we're driving at. I think Moreno, he's fast and he's decent, and he's got a good level of work rate. So it's not night and day between him and Andy Robertson, but he is a much poorer version of Andy Robertson.
It's mad, isn't it? Because I agree with everything you're saying about him as a left back, but we're not so far removed from loads of people in YouTube comments saying to us, throw him on the left wing as your backup option. Now, I'd never agreed with that.
I saw it
one
last week. You were saying it again last week.
And that's crazy. But now that that's fucked me point completely, to be honest, Paul, because I was about to say nobody says that anymore because he's not getting game time, but apparently they still do. Yeah. He was never a viable option as a left winger for me because he's just not skillful enough.
He's terrible in both final thirds.
Yeah, he absolutely is.
Fantastic wing back, but only in the area immediately surrounding the wing back position. Yeah. Peter Moore has talked about the Anfield Road end, which is interesting stuff. Nothing nailed on for me. I think, we'd all like it to move on further, but he does say we're looking at a range of options to ensure. If someone can just pretend I'm doing this in a really mid-Atlantic accent, that would be more's the better.
You mean you're not?
Is that not? No, am I?
It felt like
Oh,
it.
wow, cool. We're looking at a range of options to ensure that we have considered all aspects before making any decision. These include working up design, feasibility, cost capacity, and economic viability options. After that work is completed, and if there is a smarter design option that does not fit with the current outline planning permission, then we would submit another planning application. Only once we have completed this comprehensive process and come to a conclusion will it be the right time to move forward. So, as I said, they've got this planning permission in place that runs till like next summer, I think. So they could get cracking underneath that if they really wanted to, but it looks like they're going into it a bit more depth and detail. For me, the logical next step is to get this done. I think we've had 2 years of the main stand. I think we've seen how much the improved atmosphere, how much the atmosphere has improved for having an extra 9,000 people in the ground. It's still hard to get tickets for the vast majority of Liverpool games. I think the hunger is there, and I think it's a decent time with Liverpool performing on the pitch. I think we talk about Klopp unlocking things as he's gone along as Liverpool match. He's unlocked budgets. I think the football club, I think we've proven. I think one more season of Champions League to really truly establish ourselves. If we had done a good fist of it this year, I think it's an absolute no-brainer.
Yeah, I do, and I like the words that Moore's saying there. To be honest with you, I think the last one is particularly pertinent for me. Is if there's a smarter design option that does not fit with the current outline planning permission, then we would submit another planning application. And you think, I wonder when these ones were done. I can't remember off the top of my head, but you're probably talking 2 years ago.
I think within 2 years, but yeah.
So, and then you've got till next summer. They could feasibly be 2 to 3 years old at this stage, and the club's moved on so quickly, probably quicker than everybody thinks, that actually you might look at it and go, that's not big enough for what we want.
Yeah.
And maybe we've moved on so far and the expectations have changed so much that it would actually be worth us re-looking at those plans, paying somebody again to have a look at it, because what you might get down the line might be just so much better from changing them. And I like the way that the club are now thinking about stuff like that. It doesn't feel like, 10 years ago, when a certain somebody said there's going to be a spade in the ground on a certain date, it felt like stalling. This doesn't feel like stalling in as much as we're just going to get this right first time. I mean, because this is the last time we're going to be able to do this.
Yeah, we're still getting back to the similar issues though with when he talks about the feasibility of stuff like the design, feasibility, cost, capacity, economic viability options. These still come back to it and I think if there's people who are annoyed with it, it's not going to make anyone feel more relaxed about the whole thing. That it still does feel a little bit. It's not hard. Look, as fans, we shouldn't have to make defences for the owners and what have you. It just stands as very base logic for us. We're Liverpool. We're a dead good club. We have a stadium that's a bit too small for purpose at the moment. We want a bigger stadium. If it was me and it was my money and I had the finances to do it, I would just do it. But unfortunately, that's not the ownership that Liverpool have. They're not going to do these things without working up how it's paid back, and that's the problem we've got. Is that, I mean, the good thing about this approach is that it's starting to pay dividends because we're seeing good football, we're seeing good players, we're seeing money being spent, etc., etc. So the whole package is being justified at the moment. But I do think that's another one of those things that would make everyone feel a bit more relaxed if they just went, if it's close, to go, okay, well, yes, it's not going to pay. It's going to take slightly longer than we thought to pay it back. But you know what? In terms of what it adds to the value of Liverpool and all that kind of stuff, I'd like to see us jump on it if that makes sense.
Yeah, again, it comes back to me and there's the thing, I'll never know, and we'll never know, will we, the ins and outs of it and stuff. But as long as the club are thinking about it and they're thinking positively about it and they're considering all their options and they're making sure that they make the right decisions. Let's be honest, over the last 3 years they've made the right decisions consistently. There's those the ticket prices and all that, the things that they've got wrong, and I get that. Yeah. And maybe that's feeding into this now as well. The cost feasibility and all that type of stuff is, can we do this without putting up season ticket prices? Can we do this without the pessimist in me says that's probably not what they're thinking about, but I'd like to hope that that's what they were.
What the last chat we really saw on this was a lot of this thing of like, the main stand makes sense because you can fill corporate boxes and you can cover your costs back, or you make your costs back quicker on a £10,000 season ticket that you can on a £800 one. And that's not as much of an option with the Annie Road end. So that's the thinking on this, is that you've got to look at what's the value. The problem is the second the Annie Road end's finished, what's the first thing that happens? The first day that opens, well, the day after, when the euphoria's died down of on a massive Annie Road end, what's the first thing that gets said?
I know exactly what it is.
Go on.
It's going to be the cop.
Yeah. Well, look at the state of the cop when we sorting the cop out. So
the reason that I genuinely believe the reason they're stalling on that is they're waiting to see what happens with safe standing.
Yeah, I agree on that. It's definitely something that needs to be done in that regard. I'd just like to see Anfield get up to that nice round 60 at least, and I don't get me wrong. I'd love Anfield to be 80,000, but I think you maybe lose something along the way. You look at Old Trafford. People when Man United are absolutely the best team in the 90s and what have you, it must be great having a 60, 70 as it was growing, bigger and bigger stadium. But when it starts to tail off, and you maybe you have to factor that you might have to spend another few years in the Europa League at some point, and what does that do to the total experience? For me, the Annie Road end is a no. Do the Annie Road end up and then just make the cop just a much better stand than it actually is, and then move on from there. Mohamed Salah injured, Chris, on duty for Egypt, scored from a corner against Swaziland. I mean, the fact that Swaziland is it feels like something from a Roald Dahl book, but yes, it is. It is a country. It's a country that I forgot existed until I saw it come back up again there. It is interesting because Twitter was just awash with video clips of this amazing corner that he scored, and everyone's buzzing about how Mo Salah's back, baby, and then it's all, oh no, he's injured. At the minute, no one said one way or the other whether it's a bad one. He posted a little picture of himself back on the plane, and it wasn't like him, wrapped up in ice packs or whatever. So fingers crossed, but it's fucking typical of the international break, this, isn't it?
Yes, always yes when it comes to the international break of Liverpool players. This could be one of those sliding door moments for me, where his season either kicks on off the back of it or somebody else's does in the meantime. It's felt like we've not seen the Mo Salah that we've seen last season. It's felt like something's probably needed to change. The decision may have been taken out of Klopp's hands. We might see the emergence of Shaqiri come into this side and start performing at a level where we think, do you know what, this is brilliant. Or Mo Salah might come back actually a little bit fresher, a little bit better recuperated, and just hit form again.
I was thinking this about Salah. He was injured last summer. He never got to be injured, so he never got to reap the benefits. And that sounds daft, but my meaning on that is you're out for a few weeks. You get to mentally put your feet up, but also you get to you start to chomp at the bit of it to get back, and you're desperate to get out there, and you're watching your teammates play, and you're watching someone else playing in your position, and you're like, right, no, I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna absolutely smash it when you get back. Whereas he got injured in the European Cup final, absolute heartbreak. Then, although he had a holiday,
he fought to get back for the World Cup.
Exactly. His whole mentality, I don't see how he could possibly have relaxed for the week or 2 weeks he had off between Champions League final and the World Cup.
Not with the pressures that were put on him.
Your entire nation is desperate for you to get back. So he's gone to the World Cup, and he's suffered yet more heartbreak at the World Cup. And then the season just started again, and he's just straight back into it. And so it's almost like that thing of, I equate it to when you're ill, there's a difference between being sick and being ill, and one of them is where you're pinned to your bed and you can't move for 2 days, and the other one is when you're not right, but you can
get by.
You give a duvet day, you know what I mean, and you feel better for taking the load off. And if this is not serious, and this is not like something that requires him to go under the knife, then I agree this could be something that maybe it's a little bit of a break that he needs to come back a little bit better. We'll talk a little bit more about him in a moment. We're going to be looking ahead to Huddersfield, and we're going to be taking some of your questions. Before I do, Chris sat down with the wonderful Melissa Reddy for the Newsroom podcast last week. Fantastic as always. Here's a clip.
A lot of times I think athletes thrive in these type of situations. What's bad for one athlete might be great for another, and in this case it's bad for James Milner, but it could be the catalyst to start Naby Keita's season. I'm
actually remembering at Salzburg, he had a similar start. Naby, and it was Mane who was saying to him, relax, be patient, you've signed a long contract, you know, your time's going to come. When you get your opportunity, you make sure you maximize your opportunity and you stay in. And, you know, obviously we know how he's gone since when I was doing that Jurgen Klopp studio show for Premier League Productions, Paul Lambert was there. And Paul Lambert has watched Jurgen's training sessions a lot. He did it over at Borussia Dortmund. He's also very clued up on the Bundesliga, and he went to watch Naby, I think while he was still at Salzburg, if I'm not mistaken, and he told me he had a conversation with Ranić and said to him, your number 8 is going to be worth 50 million one day. And 50 million when he said it was like, you know, 100 million, 150 million now. But what he's able to offer, the fact that he's practically 2 players in one, if it's catching the eye of managers, and when you listen to all the things Jurgen has said about him, you know that there is a lot of quality in there. And you cannot write players off after 5 games, 6 games, 7 games, especially when you know the demanding system they're coming in to execute.
I guess, where can people get involved with the full Mel Ready Newsroom podcast?
RMTV.com. It was brilliant to sit down with Mel last week. You know, she'd just broken that Klopp piece, and she spoke at length about that, and it was a really insightful hour with her. You know, talking to her not just about what's going on at the football club, but also about, you know, being a woman in a male-dominated sports journalist industry, in the male-dominated industry, sorry. So it was really eye-opening, actually, some of the hardships that she's gone through, and she opened up quite a lot. And, you know, for me, she's one of the writers that I look forward to reading her articles. But also, she does all the design work on those websites as well. You know, on those, you know, when you're scrolling through and it looks dead good, she's the one who puts it all together, puts the pictures together, makes sure it looks right on different size phones and tablets and all that. So there's a lot that goes into one of her articles. Really, really interesting chat. And yeah, you can sign up on the website. It's £5 a month. First month is free. If you like it, keep it. If you don't like it, just fuck it off.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, everything's looking brand spanking new. So if you checked it out in the past and you're like, go on, have a look and see what we're doing. Yeah, there's some great stuff. Obviously, the Bruce Grobbelaar interview went up last week, the full extended version of that. Mental fella, genuinely mad. Actually talked a little bit about the Kenny Dalglish stuff that I mentioned at the top about him being player manager, and basically the players going, Kenny, get on the pitch. Some fantastic stuff on there, so please, I do highly recommend going and checking it all out. Huddersfield, Chris, it's weird because we're quite far out from this game at time we're recording, so a lot can happen in between now and then, but I must admit I'm kind of enjoying the international break at the moment, if only because, I mean, look, we do this a lot. International breaks are, in what we do, they are a natural breaking point for us as well. But it feels like a collective for fans as well as the players and all that. Like, it's been a good time for this side to just go away for a little bit, and whether they're getting a rest or not, I don't think the players are. You know, most of them are going on international duty and what have you, and the rest will be training just as normal. But it's been, this has probably been the international break I've most looked forward to in quite a while.
Yeah, for me it's kind of a strange one, because I looked forward to each of those games in a different way as well. So for me, it was like, oh wow, we've just got through one of the toughest schedules we're ever going to have, that I can remember over the last 4 or 5 years, you know, the calibre of team that we kept going up against. So it's felt to me like there's just been this big collective deep breath from the players, from the manager, from every single fan around the world who've just gone, wow, what a few results. Because you know, you take that beating to Chelsea, you get a loss against Napoli, but then there's that time of reflection that we don't often get during seasons, where you can look back and go, well, the last week hasn't felt great. I'm looking at the league table here and we're still top. Like, we're still joint top. Do you remember, we beat Paris Saint-Germain a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And you're just able to look back and go, what an incredible time to be alive almost, and be a Liverpool fan, because, and now it's like, I've had that little bit of reflection, and now we're getting, it's a few days before the Huddersfield game, and you're starting to remember what the games are in the order, because everybody could tell you it was going to be Paris Saint-Germain, it was going to be this, it was going to be that, and then this, and then that, and now you're like, oh, it's Huddersfield and this, and then 2 Red Scar, you're like, oh yes, that's what I'm looking forward to now. Like,
this is that part of the season where, and it's weird that it's come so early, but it's happened because the fixtures were so heavily weighted towards really good teams in that spell we've just had, that I remember talk about this a lot in like 13-14, where we played all of our hard fixtures in the first half of the season, and the easier versions of them all came in the back half. And the prevailing logic was, you've got through that. Now this lineup of fixtures really, really favours you moving forward, but you've then got to go and perform. And this is what this is now, because we have got the in inverted commas easy run of games lined up. Now, we've got Arsenal coming in at the start of November, of course, which is a little caveat to that, but Huddersfield, 2 Red Star games, Cardiff, and given that we've talked heavily in the last fortnight about Man City's start of the season and Chelsea's start of the season, they've both played both of those teams, and they've both won well against them along the way.
Are you sure? Because I'm sure Manchester City have had like Burnley at home every fucking weekend, apart from the one where they had Wolves. They just seem to have the shit teams at home every single week.
Honestly, like they played Swindon, I think, at some point at home. They've basically played every team that's ever been promoted to the Premier League and gotten relegated straight back down again. So that Derby County side, they finished on the lowest point. They've played that side. They've played the likes of Swindon. They've played Barnsley. Yeah. Dragged Barnsley up there and gave them an absolute kicking. Everywhere, Barnsley absolutely battered. But this is the thing, we've now got those games, and it was all well and good looking at them and saying, look, this is where they've accrued their goal difference. And these are all true, by the way. I've had a couple of Man City fans saying, what are you talking about, the strength of our start? Our start was, someone said to me, our start was harder last season. And I thought, and I nearly replied, I went, this is dead easy to check. And I went back, it wasn't at all. They had a dead easy, a comparatively easy start last season as well. This is our opportunity.
It's amazing what oil money can get you nowadays, isn't it, Paul?
No comment. But this is the point, isn't it? Is that it's all well and good us sitting around and going, well, cry arson about the fact that we've had a hard start to the season and these have had a really easy start to the season. We've got to play those teams now, and there can be no excuses. So I want to know from you, in a general, I'm not maybe diving too much into it, because you'll do this on Starting 11 and probably in the build-up show as well, but I've seen a lot of people discussing this is a great opportunity to start rotating the squad, and without thinking about it, that's my immediate reaction too, is you've gotten through that tough spell. Now's a good time to get everyone up to speed, and yet at the same time, I don't want to gamble not smashing these teams everywhere. And this is where you start to get into this logic of it takes bottle to rotate a football team when you're level on points at the top of the league.
It does, and you look at the fixtures there, and I've got them in front of me. Huddersfield, Red Star, Cardiff, Arsenal, Red Star, Fulham. That's the next run. And I'll ask you a question before I answer it, Paul. What does rotating this side mean when everybody's fit?
Rotating the side for me means more Fabinho, more Shaqiri, more Sturridge.
Sound, okay. So for me, it doesn't mean more Sturridge. I'd always play Roberto Firmino up top, and I'd pretty much always, for the most part, play Salah and Mane alongside him. Mm-hmm. I'd pretty much stick with my back five as well. Yeah. So rotating the side for me means changing 1, maybe 2 midfielders.
So doing exactly the same as we've been doing already.
Which is exactly what we've been doing, yeah. That's my point, and that's what I think we'll continue to do as well. There might be a system change every now and again.
Because I've seen it said that you've got Huddersfield coming up, you could... Let's say Salah's a doubt, fine. So let's just say you naturally put Shaqiri in there for the sake of argument. You could put Sturridge in there because it'd be a good idea to get these lads up to speed. And again, it's a perfectly sound logic, but I keep coming back to it. Liverpool don't need to win this game 5-0, but these are your opportunities. I think this game, weirdly, there are actually middle tier games where I would be more inclined to rotate.
I'd be looking at these spell of fixtures honestly and saying to myself, right, at some point this season we're going to need Fabinho. we need to get him up to speed at some point and play minutes in this side. And that doesn't mean he needs 90 minutes, but it might mean he needs a half, or he might need 60 minutes or something like that. So I'd be looking at maybe a couple of starts for Fabinho or a couple of appearances for Fabinho. Sturridge, I'm pretty comfortable with whatever game you're bringing him into. You know what you're going to get from Daniel Sturridge, certainly this season as well. And if Firmino looks like he needs a rest him. Yeah. Because Sturridge is there and you may as well use your squad on that in that case. The Milner one's the difficult one for me. Yeah. You know, the injury to Milner, and you know, it looks like he's going to miss a few of these games. Therefore, Keita needs to be up to speed as well. Yeah. So Keita, Fabinho, and then if you can get Shaqiri some minutes, and you know, they don't have to all be in the same game. But you're probably pinpointing Arsenal as the game where you want to go full strength, aren't you? That's the game, and then everything else, just work it around it so that, you know, you've got Fabinho some minutes, you've got Shaqiri some minutes.
Ideal world, you're going into that Arsenal game and going, whew, who starts this? Whereas at the minute, you don't really have that, because of that, and that's the real tricky thing we're in. And that's why, for me, the Huddersfield game, people saying like Fabinho stuff, I wouldn't be putting Fabinho in this game necessarily. I would be keeping largely with what we've seen already from the midfield, because I think you can maybe rotate against Cardiff if you need to, or you can go, if you've got everyone fit for it, you can do a little bit what we saw against Southampton, where you can go to 4-2-3-1 or 4-2-4, whatever you want to call it. For this, just because you back off the international break, getting these 3 points is so important to, and also because it sets the tone as well. Like
the Spurs game set the tone for the last ones.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I could like any other time of the season, I would have no problem with it being Mane, Sturridge, Shaqiri as a front three, because it's perfectly capable of beating this team. It's perfectly capable of beating most teams in the league, given that we've played, you know, pretty much all of the real tough games in this spell, certainly. But you know, I wouldn't want to upset the rhythm of what we're doing too much in this. It's very, very tricky. And of course, this is the problem with having someone like Fabinho, who is a specialist in this side. Emre Can would just come in for these games, and you'd be thinking maybe we're losing a little bit here or there, maybe we're gaining a little bit here and there, but you'd have a clearer idea of what you're getting. Whereas at the minute, I feel the logic to me feels like, do you need a number 6 for any of these games of footy?
I think that's probably where I differ with a lot of people in how I view Fabinho. I think I take your point. I know that he's a specialist. I know that he's more of a defensive midfielder than the others. I just don't know if there's that much difference between what he does and what Henderson will do. And I think you could see his role change depending on the opposition. So what I mean by that is, I think he'd play a little bit more like Jordan Henderson against somebody like Huddersfield. And I think if you were to play him against a Manchester City, you'd see a different style of performance. In quite the same way as that we see that from Gini sometimes, don't we? You see him where he's bombing on in the 8, but then also you see him as a very pragmatic 8 sometimes. Yeah. I feel like Fabinho's got more to his game than just the DM. I feel like he's going to be a great fit for this side, because just looking back at those, you know, I did a stats and tactics profile on him, so I did an hour-long show where I looked back at some of his performances for Monaco last season, and I watched one full game, and it was an incredible game because it changed my viewpoint on him. He's not that destroyer. He can be. He's got the physicality for it, but he's so much more than that.
Does he have the passing range for it?
Probably not in the same way that Henderson does.
Is he more Wijnaldum than Henderson in that regard?
Yeah, but he's also more, and don't want to get too far ahead of myself here, you know, from the 90-minute game that I watched and then probably clips of most of his games last season, it felt to me more Patrick Vieira, as in strong, can stride out with the ball, loves to play a 1-2 off maybe a number 8. Actually, how we play Pro Evo with him, you know, more that's probably that. And what we do is we do a lot of 1-2s with the defensive midfielder, and he bombs on out of position. Fabinho's got a lot of that, and he'd quite often support the attacks. Do you remember that centre back that we were looking at? Who was it we were looking at? Who just kept popping up and scoring headers? Was it Milner?
Possibly.
You know, he just seemed to be out of position a lot for what you would think of as a number 6. I feel like he's going to add a lot more than what we think at the moment, and it's difficult now because nobody's seen him. Yeah, you know, and we're 6 months removed from him playing for Monaco, so you know, no one's going back and checking. But I just don't see him as that Makelele style midfielder for us. I think he's going to be a lot more dynamic than that.
It's funny because for me, if you've got Milner, I think this is back to Gini, Keita, Milner as your midfield for these games, because you don't need someone. You need as many people who can get forward and support the attack. But equally, as we said, I wonder whether we'll see particularly at Anfield, the more what we saw in the first half of Southampton, like we tried that more attacking formation. You know, we give up a lot of control over the game in order to be a lot more dangerous. Southampton were probably slightly too good for us to try that against, but there's probably a clutch of teams who are have no ambition other than to try and stop Liverpool playing, that you maybe just go, God, yeah, who's asked? And it's whether you do that by having 6 who can attack, or whether you do it by putting a Fabinho in and letting 5 do the attacking. It could be, again, these are all myriad options. I have no idea which way we're likely to go with this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The injury things is obviously massive, isn't it? You know, you're not looking like you've got Lallana, you're not looking like you've got Milner.
Well, you reckon Lallana should be available?
I'm not sure he's playing if he is available or not.
The talk is that Salah, Van Dijk and Milner are all being monitored, and none of them have been ruled out of this game at the moment, you know, at time of recording, which bodes well. I would have imagined Milner just would have been a big cross through his name straight away. It's kind of fortunate in some regards that it is Huddersfield coming up, because if you're going to take an injury to Van Dijk and so if you're going to give them a week off, or at least that, you know, a few days off, you'd much rather it be this game than any other of the fixtures, pretty much.
Yeah, they really struggle scoring goals, don't they? Unfortunately for them. Like, so yeah, I think if there is a game, you're probably looking at Lovren and Gomez, because you don't really want to risk Van Dijk. He's too important.
Lallana is an interesting one of this, and where we've been, the problem we've had with Lallana is how we've reintegrated him into the team over the last year. We've done it catastrophically bad. You know, you never get more than a game out of Lallana recently before he goes off again. He's totally become the forgotten man at Liverpool, isn't he? We talk a lot about how this side has evolved past him, and yet we've seen it happen. We've said this a lot of Liverpool players time and time again down the years, where you go, oh no, well, he's not good enough to play for us anymore, and then he comes in, like this time a year ago, James Milner was totally surplus to requirements. Well, he's not good enough to play midfield. We've moved him to left back. He's not even good enough to play left back anymore. Moreno's back in at left back. Well, that's probably the end of Milner, and he ends up breaking the record for assists in the Champions League that season. We could yet have a shock on our hands with Adam Lallana, because it's a big but and it's a big if he stays fit. But equally, you know, we're talking about Daniel Sturridge being a viable option all of a sudden for Liverpool.
It's 2018 and we're talking about Sturridge.
Exactly. So it's not outside the realms of possibility that you could get something out of Lallana this season.
It's not, is it? And it's how you... For me, it's how you build up through the thirds, and you know that quick strike that Liverpool have got, that doesn't suit his game. You know, he's more that controlling influence on the edge of their defensive third or our attacking third, isn't he?
But more what he brings is the stuff that Roberto Firmino does. It's that pressing from behind, nicking the ball back and turning it round the other way. That was the key to his game under Jurgen Klopp, and that's something that I don't think anyone else in our midfield does that as high up the pitch as Lallana does.
No, but then I don't feel like Liverpool do that anymore anyway.
But is that based on personnel, or is it based on
I think it's control, and you know it's how many chances we're conceding nowadays. I think, you know, what we realised is if we do that press a little bit further back, if they manage to break through it, you're not almost 4v4 on the defenders. And I think it's very much a controlled press now that Liverpool have. There are times during games where we still press really high, but we pick our opportunities a little bit more now, whereas we used to just always do it. And then if they were through, we were up shit creek, and that's why we're conceding less goals. I think, you know, everybody understands their role. I think Adam Lallana certainly can go back in and do it if he is fit. Of course he can. He's a clever player, and he's got great touch, and he's got that sort of natural need and want to be able to do this. It's just it flows from him, doesn't it? It's just he picked that part of the game up so naturally. That first game against Tottenham with Klopp, he was the guy that we were like, wow. Yeah, he gets it already. Yeah. It's amazing, but we just don't play the same anymore. And until you see it, it's very hard to guess what's going to happen.
My sneaky suspicion on this is because there's been a lot of conversation about how Liverpool have changed how they've played, and I don't disagree that we have to some extent. But I think how we've utilised that midfield, I don't think we'll use it. There's no need for us to use the midfield in the same way against teams in like Huddersfield and Cardiff, etc. How much work, pardon me, Wijnaldum and Milner have done covering fullbacks That's what you talk about, being a bit more conservative, being a bit more controlled in what we do. I wonder whether we would, example being Maribor away from home last season. James Milner plays very, very advanced plays in the Lallana role, a version of that, the very, very offensive 8, picking up little pockets of space just on the right-hand side of the 18-yard box and really influencing the play. And I wonder whether we will be afforded more chances to do that against the lower quality of opposition, because the onus is going to be on us to go and win these games. And having a guy, so what I mean is, we talk about this rotational midfield today where all three guys can play in all three positions, but ultimately none of them are actually particularly world class in any of them. Whether you maybe can go a shade more attacking in these, because again, you might have to.
It's entirely possible, but I think back to how I've seen Liverpool attack so far this season. We don't have that we're going to camp on the edge of your 18-yard line and pass the ball around type of mentality that somebody like a City do. What we tend to do is we'll go up, almost Italian footy in the 90s. We'll go up to the edge of their area and we'll decide whether it's a good way in or not, and then we'll play it back. And what we tend to do, I think anyway, is we let them stretch themselves back out to the halfway line, create that space. We go back to the centre halves and we push again, maybe down the other side, and we'll keep doing that until we find an opportunity. Whereas I think a different type of side, a Pep Guardiola side, will just camp on the edge of their area and almost force you into a mistake. I don't feel like our midfield three are quite the good enough passes to be able to do that.
The closest we've seen to that was Southampton first half, where we just had the ball in the final third of the pitch.
And we played a different formation with a different midfield three.
Yeah.
And that's where I think that, like, if you are playing Lallana in that role, then you probably have to change the style of play as well. It'd be interesting to see if we move towards something like that, because I do believe, like, when we're playing lesser quality players, we can certainly do that to teams.
Yeah.
We're a side there who've just come up against Manchester City, and we had nearly 50% of the ball at Anfield.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, the least possession they've had, 49% against us since Pep Guardiola's been in the Premier League. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So we're able to take it to sides.
Yeah.
It's just that key master pass that we used to have with Coutinho's just not been there at the moment. You never think Wijnaldum's going to open this up with a slide roll through ball.
Yeah.
You never think the same with Jordan Henderson. It's just not there. What we've seen is Robertson getting around the wing and getting a ball across the box, and that's how we're attacking. Do you know what I mean?
That's the thing where I think we're going to see a completely different Liverpool, and that's why I've kind of refrained from judgment on style or anything, because the games have been the bank of games is so different. It has been so intense. And whether it's, like West Ham's not, there are a couple of easier games within there, but you could make the case that we've been building up towards playing that bank of really, really difficult fixtures in that run anyway, and it will be fascinating. I've got this sneaky suspicion we're going to let the handbrake off in the next couple of weeks, and we'll see. We'll get a much clearer idea of what this Liverpool side is. When people are saying, like, well, we're deliberately not attacking as much, or we're not, or Klopp has sacrificed goals for defence. Probably, I don't think that's untrue, but I also don't think it's also true from here until the end of the season. We're not necessarily seeing a style of play that's going to be our Liverpool play from now until May.
I think you could be right. It's just come to me then, but we used to talk about when Klopp had a week to prepare for a game, we'd see a game plan for those teams. When Klopp's known you're going to play Chelsea's and Napoli's and PSG's and Manchester City and Tottenham, and you're not having training days, 2 days rest and a day maybe to talk a little bit about tactics, and then you're into the game, then he's probably set his side up for that entire period in between international breaks to play a certain way.
Yeah.
So because he hasn't got any time on the training ground with them, and now he's had a couple of weeks, easier sort of fixture list, maybe will be a little bit more expansive.
That keep coming back to that first half against Southampton, and that was like, because as you say, there's no rest, there's no time to really work on something, and it's whether that was he was doing his training in public almost in that regard. We needed to get the lads I needed to have a look at something. I couldn't be sure until I saw it for myself, that if we're going to come up against teams that are going to defend for their lives, then we're gonna have a go at doing this. But it's fascinating anyway. Really looking forward to it. In a totally different way to the games that we've seen against a really top quality opposition, but also with that little bit of trepidation that comes with it, because it's all well and good going, bollocks to you, Man City, in your easy run. You've then got to go and do what they've done to these teams.
I trust this Liverpool side to be able to waltz through these fixtures almost.
I think yes, but I think that's why this game's so pivotal, because any team can frustrate you on a day. A team that's set up resolutely to stop you from beating them.
Liverpool can frustrate me.
Well, exactly. But this is the point. Huddersfield away from home, that they can make it their modus operandi to literally put 11 men behind the ball, and any team can stop any other team from scoring on their day if they get the right wins and they get a little bit of luck. And because, I mean, psychologically, the players are probably better tuned into all this thing. They've been getting briefed behind the scenes. This is what we're going to be doing. We're not going to go and batter teams X, Y, and Z. That's our hope. But equally, there might be something in that of just going, Mo Salah still could do with banging a few more goals in. Firmino could do with banging a few more goals in. And if it doesn't click here, then that is a site that, you do enter into a realm of a psychological issue where, well, hang on a second, Man City were able to absolutely batter these everywhere. Why isn't it quite working for us? So, yeah, it'd be this is a massive game in that regard. And there will be a little feeling, and that's why Liverpool could just do with this being one of those games where we do just rock up and do it. And it's much in the same way we talked about City could be a catalyst for the season. It wasn't quite in some regards. This could well be our Maribor. Like last season, we battered Maribor 7-0. We then went and lost to Spurs, and everyone talked about Spurs, the loss to Spurs being the catalyst. But Maribor was the game where we went, oh my God, we can score so many goals here.
Let's just do more of that and less of that, please.
Exactly that. Right, we've got some questions. We've actually got a whole bunch of questions. We do an extended version of this podcast on the RedmenTV.com. We work through loads of the more mad and random stuff that we get sent in. We'll come to that in due course, though. But we're going to kick it off with Evan Died Nen says, favourite national team other than your own?
Do you know what mine is?
Italy.
Well, yes, but no, it's actually Poland.
Okay.
Just because of the family links and stuff like that. Like, but yeah, if it was a non-family related national team, it's 100% Italy. Like.
Yeah, to be fair, when as a kid growing up, my dad used to make a point of showing me the best players playing in the World Cups, and I've always had a soft spot for Argentina because of Maradona, and Germany because they've got some of the best kits. I've got that Germany jumper that I wore the other week, and it's amazing how many people just don't like Germany. I'm like, do you not like Germany because of the war? Is that still a thing?
I think that is it. Yeah.
Is that still genuinely people? Mad, funny old world we live in, isn't it? Srijith Srinizava. I'm so sorry. I get this right some weeks and I get it wrong this week. Chris,
what is it you say when you get it right?
Srinivasan.
Nice. Is that actually right? Can you let us know in the comment section below?
You know it's right, Srijith. For Chris, which American football position would each Liverpool player specialise in? E.g., I see Keita as a viable running back.
I like him.
Don't give me every Liverpool player.
I like him as a viable running back, Keita. So I'm going to stick with you. I'm going to stick with you on that. I'm going to go Virgil van Dijk as my quarterback. Because you need to be big to see out of the pocket, like 6'5", big arm, you know what I mean? He absolutely sees the field. 100% it's going to be him. I'm going to go wide receiver 1 as Mo Salah, that deep threat, obviously. Wide receiver 2, probably controversial, Milner, because he's probably playing in the slot. Needs to be a little bit more wily, get out of those cuts on the ground quite quickly, so probably a James Milner. And then I'm thinking as like a sort of a good passing but also blocking tight end, the Joe Gomez. Okay. They're the ones that I'm going to think of. Let me know yours in the comment section, though.
But you literally could have made all those positions up there and just spoke for a couple of minutes, and I'd have no idea. Matt Froud, if you were to be transported to another reality where Premier League stadiums, he's playing the outside transponder role. Oh, brilliant. Yeah, definitely. I'll be bang up for that.
Left fucking hell, I fucked up the Friends reference. Phalange.
Brilliant. Yeah, the left phalange. In another reality where Premier League stadiums were shifted around, Liverpool still playing Liverpool, but for example, Selhurst Park is where Anfield normally is, and Liverpool play there. Which stadium would you hope Liverpool were playing in?
Celtic Park. It's not Premier League, is it? Is that what it says? I've not written an answer down to this question. I just don't give a shit, to be honest with you, mate. No offence, Matt. I just don't care.
I mean, no one cares about any of these questions, Chris.
No.
But just because you've said Celtic Park because you didn't read the questions, no reason to poo-poo Matt's question.
Fuck off, you frowdy.
It's Old Trafford.
Yeah.
It's the biggest stadium. It's the biggest and it's already red.
Whatever. You're going to make me pick one, aren't you?
You've literally got 19 stadiums to pick from.
Yeah.
St James's Park.
No.
Selhurst Park.
No, I don't like St James's Park. I've had a bad
The
experience
Vitality
there.
Stadium.
No.
The St Mary's. St Mary's is a decent shout.
No.
Mate, just pick a fucking stadium and we can move on.
No. It's fine.
Vicarage Road. Chris is having Vicarage Road.
No, I'm definitely not having Vicarage Road. That's basically
Paul James, which player play? If you disagree with Chris's pick of Vicarage Road, let him know at Mr. Blood Red on Twitter. Which player played for a rival team that you should hate but just couldn't? Drogba for me. He was a pain in the ass. Always had an unreal game. I couldn't bring myself to like Didier Drogba because he was so much of a pain.
I have pretty much no problem hating players of other teams. I'm quite a hateful person at times.
I've got a lot of hate in my heart.
And you know what? I need to spread that round. But if I had to pick, the one that I probably admired most was Paul Scholes.
Really?
I did hate him, like.
Couldn't stand him. Didn't like him as a player. Didn't like him as a... I never got the Paul Scholes.
I just loved watching Paul Scholes play football.
Yeah.
Still hate him, like.
Yeah, to be fair, the Man United, there's a lot of those Man United players around that time. Like, there's every reason to hate Eric Cantona, and yet there was just something so, like, you know, like the bit where he flicked his collar up and he just was the most French he's ever been in his entire life. And you just look at him go like, what an absolute massive gobshite, but at the same time, number 7 on the back, believes he's the best player in the world. There was something like really sickeningly, you know, likeable about that at the same time. So probably someone like a Cantona, but I did really, really dislike him. It's tough. I'll pick Cantona for the sake of argument. Right, we've got loads more questions coming up on the subscriber Q&A. Ryan Maxwell asked if you had to let one of the players sleep with your wife, but in return you could sleep with their wife. Who would you choose and why? Starting 11 of the best Premier League players, but you can't have 2 players with the same first letter as their surname, so you can't have Gerrard and Giggs or Schmeichel and Shearer. That is interesting. There's a lot of scribblings out on my workings out there, and a whole host of other things, including our ideal weekend music festival. So if you give a flying fuck about our thoughts on any of those things, get over to the redmentv.com. It's always good fun. We've got a whole host of other things. As mentioned, the incredible Newsroom podcast with Mel Reddy, the exclusive interview with Bruce Grobbelaar, the exclusives from the past with the likes of Lucas Leiva, Jurgen Klopp, etc., etc. And of course, the website is brand spanking new as well. So if you just want to go and have a little look around and see what we've got going on there, it is magical, absolutely magical. Thanks to the guys at Cyberfrog for designing that for us. Brilliant, Chris. Thank you very much.
And you, Pablo.
Everyone have a great week and hopefully a great weekend at the end of it. And as I say, check out the rest of the content on the website. Walk on.